Welcome to Security Watch. This is Zain. Today, the topic of our show revolves around Turkey, Turkey's relation with the United States, and also Turkey's role within the region. Today, the guest of our show on our first segment is a senior geopolitical analyst, Inan. He is a Turkish geopolitical analyst. Our second guest, as always, is Mr. Athar Javed. He is a senior geopolitical analyst and also DG Pakistan House, an Islamabad-based think tank. Welcome to our show, Kyle. This is Zain Khan. It is a pleasure having you on Security Watch.
Pleasure to be on your show, Zain. Thank you very much.
Welcome to our show, Mr. Athar Javed. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
Kyle, let's get to the first question. Does Turkey remain committed in receiving international guests at Hagia Sophia Mosque?
Absolutely. The international community at some point have tried to misinterpret Turkey's intention to converting Hagia Sophia into a mosque. First of all, let me make clear that Hagia Sophia is open to all without any impediments. Any international tourist can visit at any point. And rightfully so, when Turkey, the Fatih Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror had came to Istanbul, back then it was Constantinople, in 1453, there was the idea of converting this church into a mosque. So this decision was already made about 500 years ago. It just was enacted now.
Kyle, I want to get to a very important question. Will Turkey's deepening involvement within the Libyan conflict be the catalyst for a reset in the relations with the United States of America?
Absolutely. Turkey is unfortunately against many fronts in Libya, be it the UAE, be it Russia, be it Egypt, and the last partner is Egypt, but the main power brokers in Libya are Russia and Turkey, which Ankara and Moscow have recently reached a deal, a truce, a very fragile truce, looking good for the future of Libya. Now, Turkey, I want to emphasize this point. Turkey is backing a UN-approved government, the National Accord, whereas Russia and other parts are backing the rebel Khalifa Haftar. So this I want to say the renegade leader is not doing good for the Libyan future. There's two cities, Sirte and Jifte, that need to be cleansed by the rebels, and preceding that, Turkey will probably maintain its overwhelming military force in Libya.
Mr. Athar Javed, how do you look at the Libyan situation?
Yeah, I think on one subject, I would say I agree with Kyle that there has to be, as we say, method in the madness. The issue here is that if, after post-Gaddafi Libya is supposed to be very stable and holding all the previous agreements between nations, because I think the issue here is also regarding what happened to those agreements and how the neighboring countries have been looked by current Libyan setup. And by this I mean is that the interventions by major powers, again, like in Syria or Iraq or other countries, has created much more difficulties for the neighboring countries. The distant country, on the contrary, have gained rather maybe resourcefulness there, but it will not achieve the peace they require, because in the end, it's the people of Libya which will suffer, and also the neighboring countries. And I guess there is a point now that the UN should play a better role and must actually adhere to the international norms as well. The other powers should follow the suit. So in that way, I have to agree with Kyle on this one. But my point is that there has to be an approach which should bring in negotiation and peace and try to create a conducive environment so there may not be another military conflict in the making. By the end of the day, it appears to me that they want to engage Turkey in a negative confrontation and drag into negative fights or sets of battles within the region that try to weaken the sort of stances or force of Turkey. That's what my opinion is.
Kyle Inan, will Turkey remain in Syria until peace is established?
Absolutely. Until a peace, a formidable peace atmosphere is established in Syria, Turkey will remain in Syria as far as possible. I want to say there has been a recent election in Syria. I want to call it pseudo elections, which is not a internationally recognized election, unfortunately. And Turkey is in there in the region of Idlib. I want to say Idlib is the crux of the matter, where Russian-backed, again, one of the power brokers in Syria, is meddling some parts of the country to send more refugees into Turkey and gain geopolitical influence in the region, which is nothing surprising, as that's been the case over the past 25 years, quarter of a century. But Turkey is committed to remaining in Syria and establishing its regional goals.
Mr. Athar Javed, how do you see Turkey's role within Syria?
Yes, to be honest, we have seen in the previous years since the conflict started in Syria that, as I said, multiple players on the ground are fighting for their interests. Turkey has its interest to stabilize the regional borders with Turkey, and then also fighting out any organization, terrorist organization or militancy, which can and which had been impacting inside the stability inside Turkey. For that matter, if you look at the Turkey's argument is that the PKK and these parties and other terrorist group, they come into the country, attack them and go back and take refuge and get the ground support from material support training on the ground. And that is very problematic. Of course, we have also seen the 4 million refugees that Turkey is hosting. And that was designed by the agreement between European countries, between the US and all that. But the issue here is that how you can move forward from here, because keep engaging them and then also accusing, blaming or creating a very sort of, I would say, crafting an image, a very deceptive image on the ground, that as if the Turkey is the only country which is in Syria and which is creating all the problems. It's not possible. On the ground, there are Iranians, there is Russians, American-backed, all those other private armies, mercenary groups, and recruited from around the world. Those who are doing it. Turkey is protecting its border, as Turkey argues, from the PKK and all the other organizations which they have listed. And I think other countries have also listed as a terrorist organization. Overall, I would say the Kurdish and Turkish, in what I am hearing from other sources, that they're trying to reach, and they have reached many agreements. And this is their internal issue, and they will resolve internally. We cannot really invite other actors in Syria, and while not taking a single refugee, and then trying to create unrest and resentment within the population in buffer zone and incite them to attack inside Turkey. This is a kind of security situation for Turkey, which she has to deal with.
Kyle, what could be done to improve the bilateral trade relations between the United States of America and Turkey? And also, please quickly comment on the relations between Turkey and the United States.
Well, Turkey right now is the US's 32nd trading partner. I am very surprised because Turkey and US have now excellent economic and political relations, except the S-400 issue, which is a different last-minute issue. Turkey and US have shared the goal. Current trade volume is around $20 billion right now. Now, both sides want to increase that to $75 billion. Unfortunately, I'm going to criticize President Trump here for raising tariffs on Turkish steel and metal industry, but I guess that's a domestic concern for President Trump. I think if there's more incentive in some of the more intermediary goods, Turkey can provide these intermediary goods to Turkey, and we could definitely raise that $20 billion to $75 billion. in the future. And I think Turkey has, whether it be military upgrades, technology, has advanced into a global stage. And I think some of the international partners, especially a critical one like the US, must understand what Turkey is doing to become at least a regional technology player.
Mr. Athar Javed, would you like to add something before we wrap up this segment?
I think I'd like to add actually a bit more on the strategic side between Turkey and United States. Look, as a NATO member state, Turkey has been part of stabilizing force in Afghanistan. And also they have been raising their concerns when and if within the NATO, their other members are violating or going against the member like Turkey, for example. There are many members who would follow their own respective national interest. And I would see US to come forward in a more friendly fashion and try to understand that being a member in the military alliance doesn't mean that Turkey cannot follow its strategic interests, because by the end of the day, if the US wants to be the leader of the world, it has to include and incorporate the sentiments of the people of those member alliances. And that includes other members as well. I'm not particularly saying it's Turkey, but since Turkey always singled out by some of the member states, so I think there is a need for Turkey and the US to improve relations simply because for the benefit of both countries, and also large diaspora living in the United States, Turkish diaspora. Of course, on the technology side, whereas the Chinese are, and the US and China is going to face a lot of challenges in the coming months and years, US needs in the Middle East a country with a potent force and much more advanced regional and territorial understanding of the conflict in the Middle East.
Thank you so much, Kyle and Inan, for being on Security Watch. It was a pleasure having you.
Likewise, it is my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Athar Javed. It's always a pleasure having you, as always.
Thank you very much.
Before we get to our second segment and last segment, we should take a short break. Take a break. Welcome back to Security Watch on our second and last segment. Our special guest joining us on our second segment is İlker Sezer. He is the foreign news editor at the Hurriyet in Istanbul, Turkey. Our second guest, as always, is Athar Javed. He is DG Pakistan House and also a senior geopolitical analyst. We will be discussing Turkey and Egyptian escalation within Libya. Welcome to our show, İlker Sezer. This is Zain Khan. It is a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Mr. Athar Javed, on our second segment.
Thank you very much, Zain.
İlker, I want to get to the first question. Why are Turkish forces in Libya?
Well, Turkey's main motivation has been to prevent Libya to fall under the control of many countries which are acting against the Turkish interests in the region, and namely France, Greece, Egypt, and United Arab Emirates, even though United Arab Emirates is out of the region, actually. And also Turkey has many different interests, including business interests, maritime border zone claims, and also military interests in the region. You know, during Gaddafi time, Turkish generals used to go to Tripoli to discuss about this maritime border zone. It has been discussed in these times. It's nothing new that Turkey found out in this in the last year. Turkey has always been interested in signing a maritime border zone deal with Libya to legitimize its claims in the East Med region. So, you know, also Turkish businesses has strong interests in the country, especially Turkish construction businesses. I was in Tripoli and I've seen it with my own eyes, you know, like dozens of huge buildings left unfinished by Turkish companies, and the deals reached the amount of $20 billion. So this is a huge interest. Apart from this, there are countries which built a grand coalition, namely United Arab Emirates, France, Greece, and also Egypt, and intentionally acting against the Turkish interests and always wants to exclude Turkey from any negotiations which is critical for the region. So Turkey saw the need to intervene militarily in this conflict, and as of now, everything is going fine.
Mr. Athar Javed, why is the Egyptian military planning or is already inside of Libya?
Yes, then I think it's very obvious that as he mentioned, our honorable colleague mentioned, that it is about the interest to control territory in terms of securing their economic and trade interest. But this is for Turkey. Egyptians, I think it's as he mentioned, is a grand alliance being developed, and that alliance includes France and Greece. We understand Greece opposition because Greece has been involved against Turkey on the Cyprus issues. On France, basically in North Africa, most of the colonial previous colonies, which they were under France as well, and Libya had, of course, interest. Italians had interest in Libya before, but Italians are not active. So we see a very uniquely, I would say, strange collision between three parties. Like we got involved now, we heard from our colleague, the UAE is also involved heavily. But we also have to understand that sometime it happens as in all conflicts, that previously Iraq's extension conflict moved with the material and other resources in Syria. And from there, it has moved now to Libya. So these issues will continue because in the end, all these issues cannot be solved by military. We all know that. The military interventions from Egypt and brotherly Muslim countries, it won't help the cause of the global security. What it will do is it will further divide the Muslim world. And I think, therefore, it is important that these parties should collaborate or sit with Turkey and understand Turkey's concerns. Because if they understand Turkey's concern, that why Turkey had to send military, I mean, what was the reason behind it? So there is a need for them to work together, I think. This is my opinion.
Mr. Ilker, I want to ask a very important question. How are relations of Turkey with the Arab world while looking at the Libyan situation?
Well, the Arab world, the term of Arab world is so broad, and basically the propaganda against Turkey is focused on the Turks and Ottoman past. Ottomans are again invading the Arab lands. It is the motto of Arab nationalist propagandists. But in some regions, especially in the east of Libya, and also in Egypt, and also in the United Arab Emirates, which is actually the main source of this propaganda, people are believing in it. Honestly, I follow it in the social media, and and when you see such things, you basically think that all Arabs are thinking like this, but this is not true. And United Arab Emirates is spending too much money to create propaganda and to pay the lobbyists in Washington. But the soft power of Turkey in the Arab lands, it's immense. People are believing in Turkey. People are believing what Turkey has been doing in Syria. People are seeing that these Gulf countries doesn't host even one single Syrian, but Turkey hosts 4 million Syrian. And these people are seeing that Turkey has been the center of people who have been pushed out of their countries and left their countries, and they are building a different Arabic diasporas in Istanbul. And people, they're all seeing it. In order to claim something that you have done, you need to show something. And Turkey is showing many good things, that it has engaged in the international politics. Turkey is defending the Syrian civilians in Idlib. Turkey is acting against NATO, which Turkey is the only country in NATO that acts against Russian interests. And people are seeing this propaganda is not achieving its aim, but people in a broad geography of Arabic world, I think most of the Arabic people understands the real intention of Turkey in the international politics.
Mr. Athar Javed, there is a high chance of an escalation between Turkey and Egypt, but if there was a hypothetical dialogue between the two parties, on what grounds could the two countries make a deal?
I think this question is very obvious, important question, but at the same time, the answer lying in our earlier discussion, our colleague was mentioning that it is the interest of the regional countries that when instability spreads, it destroys the interest of the regional countries. The most important is that the Turkey very clearly has economic trade interest and also military and geostrategic interests from the naval point of view and other defense point of view. They should be addressed by the parties who are intervening in another country. Turkey's argument, as we understand, is not about $20 billion remaining investment or suspension of project. It's also about securing their eastern that side as well in the Mediterranean. And this Mediterranean, I think this needs to be addressed, and there is a possibility. You look, these Muslim countries can still sit with each other and talk to each other and find a resolution. Because after all, no country is going to occupy Libya. And because there are bigger players involved in it, US, Russia, and other countries, France, for example. So it is important that to counter any colonial approaches which are coming from the major powers to capture the resource or to sit there and operate from Libya to destabilize other countries, because that is what happened in previous conflicts in Iraq, in Syria. We have seen that the non-state actors were used and international mercenary groups were used to destabilize and to fight out the conventional armies. So I think it is very important to create some kind of negotiation between these countries. And Egypt and other countries, they should address Turkish grievances and try to create a unanimous agreed plan to work together, not only to protect their own interests, but also to protect the Libyan people. Because in the end, it's the Libyan people and all these people who are living and going to suffer out of this escalation. They are the stakeholders as well. So I think there is a possibility. Or we all know that the conflict started, there is a risk, but the risk can be managed and mitigated by understanding of the Turkish position and not to militarize the trade and economic interest.
Mr. İlker, I want to get to a very important question. How do you foresee the coming months in Libya, and how will Turkey assist the Libyan people?
Well, this will totally depend on the fact that whether the conflict is increasing or decreasing, and the threats coming from Sisi is a sign that the conflict can increase, but also this is totally up to Egypt's next moves. And Egypt has been the side that increases the conflict because before supporting Haftar and before going into a partnership with United Arab Emirates, Egypt traditionally had a balanced approach in Libya. There was no side that Egypt is totally supporting. Egypt was talking to both sides, and no big support to Haftar, no big support to GNA, and it was in the middle, and it was trying to mitigate the problems, and it was perfect. And after Egypt and United Arab Emirates started to intervene in the conflict in a very heavy way, it actually triggered the Turkish intervention. And in order not to trigger another big Turkish intervention, I think they can stay calm because there is no historical threat coming from Libyan borders to Egypt. Historically, the threats coming from Sinai, threats coming from other regions to Egypt, but historically there is no threat coming from Libyan borders, and no one in GNA, no Turkish officials, and no one in Libya wants to take even 1 inch from Egypt. So the explanation of the threats, so-called threat coming from Libya, it is, so to speak, not very concrete.
Mr. Athar Javed, any final words before we end the program?
I think I will actually emphasize again on negotiation and peaceful resolution of the conflict, as I said. We don't want to see more sufferings of people, and we don't want to see Turkey negatively engage in the military conflict to achieve other objectives, because it appears to me that they want to engage Turkey in subsets of conflicts, like they tried to did in Syria, supporting terrorist organizations, attacking them back inside the country, creating propaganda against the government, and taking on creating this falsification of idea of Ottoman against Arabs. It doesn't exist. There is no Ottoman, and there are no Arab unity as such. They are countries independently, nation states working for their national interest. So we all have to understand that the negotiation and peaceful resolution between the Muslim countries is important for the unity. There is no way that a single country can achieve anything. So they have to talk to each other. So my suggestion, as looking from outside of Middle East, from Pakistan or from Europe, I think this is the best approach. And this all conflict always end on a table, negotiation. So we have to do it. So there must be discouragement and discouraging effort should be made from other countries to Egypt and other countries not to heavily involve, not to increase the military intervention, and talk to Turkey, sit together to understand.
Thank you so much, Mr. İlker Sezer, for being on Security Watch. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Mr. Athar Javed. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much, Zain, for inviting me.
This was Mr. İlker Sezer, foreign news editor at the Hurriyet, joining us from Istanbul, and also joining us from Copenhagen, Mr. Athar Javed, DG Pakistan House. We were discussing Turkey inside of Libya and a possible escalation with Egypt. Until the next episode of Security Watch, keep on watching Security Watch. This is Zain Khan. Take care and goodbye.